So good evening, everybody, and welcome to this free webinar for May. We are talking about leadership this evening, specifically wellbeing within your staff team. So welcome to this webinar this evening. I'm just going to do the first few screens and then I'm going to pass you over to the capable and confident hands of Hazel, who's going to lead the rest of the session for us. So good evening, Hazel, and welcome. Thank you.
Good evening.
So some of you might have joined sessions before where Hazel and I have come together to deliver some training, and we did some paid for training a couple of months ago where her partner also joined us, John, to do a 2.5-hour webinar on mental health. And Hazel has kindly offered to cover some of the sessions, especially the one that I'm on holiday for, which I'm really looking forward to in August. I'm not sure we've put a title on that. So again, like I said earlier, for some of you that have been on the call, if you want to use the chat function and let us know if you've got any specific requests, then obviously we'll consider those as well. So most of you will know me in terms of being Sue, and Hazel there in the right hand corner with me. And she's from Training for People That Care and does lots of accredited training. So obviously if you want to find Hazel on her website, you'll find her there as well. And she's also linked in to me on my website. So if you go on my courses, there's a box there to click straight through to Hazel's website if you can't find Hazel any other way. So tonight we're going to be talking about well-being, obviously. So I thought I'd kick off by just thinking about what well-being is, because obviously when we start a webinar, it's useful if we're all on the same page in terms of what we're talking about. So just a dictionary definition, really. Although there are several definitions of well-being, I've chosen this one because it says that it's a general consensus that well-being includes the presence of positive emotions and moods. So, for example, contentment and happiness, etc., and the absence of negative emotions, ill-being, such as depression and anxiety. And therefore, we need to think about it being well-being being connected with our satisfaction with life, fulfillment, and also positive functioning. When we talk about well-being and mental health, we've got people who have got positive well-being, and obviously the opposite of that is obviously somebody that's not feeling very well in terms of wellness and illness, but thinking about how we're all feeling. Tricky when you've got a huge staff team, obviously, because you're thinking about yourself, because even though most of you, by the looks of things, are leaders, managers, Senkos this evening, we tend to think about the well-being of our workforce and obviously trying to keep everybody happy and everybody's well-being and mental health as positive as possible at work. But then obviously you've got to think about yourself as well, especially after the last couple of years that we've had, because I think a lot of us are feeling that worn outness. Obviously you've had a lot on your plate the last couple of years, so not forgetting yourself, which is a huge thing, because I'm always saying you can't pour from an empty cup. So if you are a leader, manager, or an owner of a setting, then obviously we need to think about, or you need to think about, how you're supporting your own well-being, because you can't be continually trying to support everybody else and not feel that you're doing your own and making sure you're looking after yourself. So this particular quote I chose to use talks about them being different elements of well-being. It talks about the mental well-being, it talks about your physical well-being, economic well-being, and emotional well-being. And again, over the last couple of years, we've all probably been on a bit of a roller coaster at some stage in terms of all these different well-being models as well. So obviously we're going to speak a lot about mental well-being this evening, or Hazel is, and when I finish this bit. And we need to think about being physically active, obviously, and thinking about how that can promote wellness. Economic well-being, we've heard today that the Bank of England put the base rate up in terms of the interest rates, which obviously is going to be a knock-on effect to lots of families. And obviously we've got the food increase and the fuel increases at the moment as well, and obviously lots of pressures on families' finances. That might be you and obviously staff, and obviously the well-being of the families that use your services as well. And then emotional well-being, and again that emotional roller coaster of everything that's happening in the world or has happened over and above the norm really in the last couple of years as well. So mental health, and then I'm going to hand over to Hazel, includes our emotional and psychological well-being. It affects how we think, how we feel and act, and how we handle stressful situations, how we relate to other people, and how we make choices. Mental health is important at every stage of life, from conception through to adolescence and through to adulthood as well. Sometimes we think, I think, of mental health as being something that when people are struggling with their mental health. But obviously we have to really think about this in terms of we've all got mental health, but it tends to be spoken about maybe in terms of when it becomes a barrier, when it becomes a struggle. So there's many different factors that might contribute to our mental health. So there might be some biological factors such as our genes or brain chemistry. There might be life experiences, and as I've said already, you know, with COVID, we've got obviously the Russian and the Ukraine war going on at the moment. There might be some abuse maybe there for some people in their past as well, or it might be domestic violence, etc. That's in their lives at the moment and lived experiences. And then it might be that there's a family history of mental health issues as well. So that's the kind of the benchmark in which we're going to spring from this evening here as well. So just over to you for a couple of minutes, if you don't mind just using the chat function. As I said earlier, the chat function isn't recorded, it's not picked up on the screen, and we won't be using your names either for this. So if you want to use a chat function, please, to just share with us anything that might be specifically affecting yourself or staff at the moment. Obviously not breaking confidentiality at this stage, but just the general kind of things that might be tricky for you and staff at the moment. Are there any familiar things that are familiar to everybody? So we'll just keep an eye on the chat function, because sometimes it takes a moment to kick through. You might be typing away and then suddenly everything comes pinging through all together. So we'll just keep an eye on that. If you can just share with us some of the things that might be specifically affecting staff teams at the moment. Obviously, we've had the revised EYFS, but we've got maybe our teeth well into that now. Maybe that you've got an offset inspection looming, and maybe there are some people that have been off recently with COVID. And in terms of longer effects on COVID, there's lots of people with like brain fog and, you know, really kind of tiredness and fatigue. That's possibly more than what they maybe used to feel in terms of brain fog and fatigue and things. What is it that you are feeling or you're experiencing with your team at the moment? If you want to do it in a direct message to either myself or Hazel, so you're not sharing it with everybody, very welcome to do that as well. Okay, so we need to think about staff being confident in their practice, which is obviously a huge kind of spectrum of things that we can think about there, isn't it? So we need staff to be confident in their practice on a daily basis so that they can be confident in their practice for an offset inspection. But if we think about the preceding screens in terms of the things that can affect them and the things that could maybe get in the way of their confidence, that sometimes staff know their stuff really well, but they're lacking confidence when somebody's asking them, or they're lacking confidence maybe when somebody's observing them, or maybe the things, the stresses that they might have going on in their private lives have got some impact maybe on how they are communicating and interacting with other staff members and maybe the children and families as well. So there's a huge spectrum there, isn't there? And last month's webinar, when I did it, we talked about that kind of leadership and management kind of styles, but thinking about that love-based pedagogy really for staff as well. When Ofsted first started including wellbeing under leadership and management in the education inspection framework in September 2019, I think lots of people started with these wellbeing kits and baskets in the toilet and all these bits and pieces, and then maybe a treat on a Friday or something like that. But I think it's a lot more than just those. It's nice to do those things. It's lovely to be able to appreciate staff and do those things. But it's obviously a whole lot more than just being the treats and the wellbeing baskets and things like that as well. It's the time to try and touch base with staff on a regular basis and find out what's going on for them. and making sure that you've got that open door policy really for them to be able to come to you. But sometimes I think it's tricky because you'll say, I've got an open door policy, but staff will know that you're really, really busy and that you're up against the clock yourself, actually. And sometimes they'll think it's not, it's a bit trivial, their issues might be trivial to you, and they might feel they're putting more on you by coming to knock on your door and trying to speak to you about it. But if you've got that planned in time at certain points in the week where you're touching base, they might then feel that they can approach you with something rather than troubling you with it, if that makes sense, maybe. Okay, so we've got another couple of people saying exactly the same thing actually at the moment. Experienced staff struggling with their economic well-being, particularly with the rise of the cost of living. Absolutely, and there's possibly going to be the potential knock-on effect to the families as well that are obviously using your setting as well. I think this is a huge thing at the moment as well for everybody. The food's gone up, obviously the gas and electric, if you've got diesel or petrol to put in your car, and obviously, as we've just said about the rising interest rates today, so that's possibly going to be something that's an issue. Spoke a little bit about it last month in terms of some of the kind of easier things we might be able to do. And sometimes if, for example, if you cook meals on site, just for example, is there an option for maybe the staff to have some nursery food, so that maybe it's a lesser thing to worry about in terms of getting a sandwich or doing, it might just help them there as well. Sorry, I think we've got somebody coming off mute, so just let me see who that might be.
Wszystko w kurzu. On powiedział, że starałem się, ale on usiadł po prostu.
Sorted. Okay, so yeah, lots of things there in terms of cost of living, and obviously the expenses for yourselves as well, I guess, and obviously running your nurses as well. Just had to demote how a manager of 20 years due to a safeguarding incident. She's obviously struggling, has decided to take some time. Yeah, I think sometimes we can get that where the low well-being is there, and obviously if they've got some personal difficulties and things there as well, tricky, isn't it? It takes one member of staff sometimes to be that negative Nelly and pass those negative vibes on to other people as well. But yeah, it can be a huge thing in terms of being piggy in the middle as well, can't it? So yeah, I feel for that as well. There's lots of tensions sometimes within staff teams there as well, isn't there? And it's about how to support that member of staff, isn't it? Obviously there's still on staff role, so it's that duty of care, isn't it? But kind of knowing what they want from you, I guess, as well. I'm going to pop myself on mute and hand you over to the capable and confident hands of Hazel, who's going to take us through the rest of the screens. But we'll probably Hazel will refer back to some of these things in a couple of screens time as well, and maybe give you some pointers and refer back to what you've said here as well. So thank you for doing that. I'm going to pop myself on mute now, and I'm going to hand you over to Hazel.
Thank you, Sue. It's really interesting, some of the comments that you've made, and I've made notes of them, so I will come back to them and we'll have a look at it. But as we can see from the slide in front of you, it's very much about this mental well-being to mental unwell. It's really important that we understand where we are on this spectrum, because it can be that you're up and down throughout your life on this spectrum. It could be that something's happened within the setting. It could be that it's a weekly thing or a monthly thing. So all the time we're looking at individuals going between being mentally well to mentally unwell, and this is where we've got to support ourselves as well as our staff when these moments are coming, when these stresses are coming. Because as Sue was saying, sometimes, when we're looking at mental unwell, it could be that certain things will have a knock-on effect. So if that person's got difficulties and they keep getting more difficulties, then it pushes them further down the spectrum. So it makes them, worse than what they would be. Right, Sue, thank you. So it's all about what stress is, and it's really important when we think about what stress is, how people react to pressure. And it was interesting what you were saying about staff not knowing what to say and not being confident in themselves, because this is where it's our role as a manager to make them confident, to make them believe in themselves, because because it can be on some pressures when Ofsted are coming in and things like that, it can be really demanding on individuals. So we need to understand what pressure and what triggers are for every person, so that we're sort of reacting to that stress. And that's where our well-being policy needs to be coming into place. And it's really interesting when we're thinking about the well-being, and we're not just ticking that box. And that's what I wanted us to do this evening, not so that we're ticking that box and saying we're having these well-being meetings with our staff and that, but actually that staff can actually see what's happening, what changes are being made, and that you're caring for yourself as a manager. Because I think it is very much, when you're caring for yourself, then you can support others in a better way. And it's very difficult. I understand that because of the staffing levels at the moment. I'm getting more reports now from nurseries about staff shortages and things like that. So it is really important that we start to look at that. Thank you, Sue. So when we sort of look at this stress versus pressure, this is where it's really important to sort of looking at how we're supporting this and trying to keep that pressure level to a minimum, trying to, we want to be confident, we want to be stretching ourselves, but we don't want to be ending up in crisis, because that will just exhaust people. And that's why people are going off sick a lot. And it's really important that if you're doing your well-being meetings and you're supporting staff or just talking to them on day-to-day basis, that you're realizing what's going on, so that you're not having this crisis and staff aren't going off. As Sue said before, we've done sessions with my partner, who is a CBT therapist, and he always talks about, and he's worked with a lot of different companies, about pinpointing the stress straight away, because you don't want someone to go off sick because of the stress, because it will be very difficult to get them back in. We need to see what those stresses are and talk to them about the stresses, and see if we can support them with those stresses, so that they're not having this crisis all the time, so that we are supporting them. And I know it's very difficult, because you're supposed to be the font of all knowledge to your staff. You're supposed to be there to support them, to help them. But who supports you, which is really important, so that's why we want to talk about these well-being things that you can do for yourself, so that you're able to support yourself and staff. Thank you, Sue. So, we're thinking about what mental health problems are. We're thinking about how, and it doesn't matter what age a person is or what their personal background is or anything like that. It is how we deal with things on a daily basis, how we support things, and how, like we do with our children, how resilient we are, how, and how we're supporting those things. Because, a wide range of experiences can affect people, the way they think, the way they feel, the negative thoughts and things like that. So it's really important that we start to look at both your personal and working environment and how you're doing that, so that you're being able to support things that you're coping with every day. And I think it's really important that, we're looking at the ability to cope in living day to day and supporting day to day, because it is important. A member of staff that I used to have working with me, she used to be struggled quite a lot. She was Masenko and took all the paperwork on board and really did struggle with herself. about how she was going to cope with making sure these children were getting the right reports, working with the families and everything like that. So we used to give her, I used to try and reassure her and try and support her with the paperwork and things like that, but she did take a lot of it on board herself. So we used to try and support her into going out for lunch, going out away from work, so she had that break and got that support that she needed. So it's really important that, you know, we look at people's problems, whether, you know, they might be only small to us, but to that individual there will be, you know, quite large and need a lot more support. Right, so thank you.
Sorry, I was just going to type your message, but I'm just going to speak it instead.
Oh, yeah, that's great. Yeah, please.
Quicker. Last couple of on-site visits that I've done to nurseries for their preparing for Ofsted kind of visits. The last couple, well, there's several actually over the last couple of months who have really thought about where staff do take the breaks. So yes, it's brilliant if you can get some time away from the setting and do your half an hour or 3/4 of an hour lunch away from the setting. But we do know, obviously, with staff ratios, they don't have to be, obviously, in the rooms if babies are sleeping. There's obviously got to be somebody there, but they don't have to be in ratio on the ratios that have to be maintained, as long as they're on site for maybe doing a fire evacuation or whatever, if necessary. But what they have done is really looked at the staff environment, so wherever the staff room is, because traditionally we've got notes up here and there, and in the toilets we've got safeguarding notices, and everywhere you go it's like work, and nobody can obviously have a chill out. There's a couple of them lately that have really just thought about that staff room environment, and they've taken that notice board away, and it's where they can actually chill, have their lunch, have a cup of tea or coffee or what have you. And it's not just a kind of, oh, as you sat there, there's a pile of books here that you might want to read, or there's a pile, and talk about textbooks in terms of children's development and policies and procedures and newsletters. They've taken the stresses away and tried to make it a chill out room. So even if they can't leave the site because they've got to be in ratios on site, they've got that nice relaxing environment to be in. Sorry. I
think that's really important. I mean, I was in a nursery last week, and when I've gone in before, they had a cloakroom area, and I thought it was really interesting that they turned the cloakroom into a staff room, because they'd established that staff needed to be in and relaxing and things like that. And there were some really nice things in there, pot plants and all that kind of thing, that would make that environment very supportive for people. So Sue's put this on now. So if you'd like to sort of think about any messages, you know, any factors that we could help you with or anything like that. Interesting what Sue read out about the safeguarding issue and dragging staff down. I've had that in a nursery that I owned, and that had a real impact on my staff and individuals. So I targeted that individual and supported that individual, because that stopped that knock-on effect to the other staff, and supported them, and was probably over enthusiastic, over supportive, but it needed that kind of thing to turn that thing around, so they weren't dragging the rest of the team down with them. Because they've been there a long time, and you know, the other team really looked up to this person. So I really did concentrate on supporting this person with everything we did.
So a couple of settings also, I'm just saying about the Hooger approach. Some of the settings, obviously it's quite what's the word I'm looking for? Quite a popular approach at the moment. It's the Hugar approach, but just that homely environment in terms of staff rooms and obviously throughout the setting as well, including, like Hazel was saying, kind of plants and things, something, you know, just to promote wellness. Lots of people have obviously downgraded colour-wise over the last several years. It used to be nurseries where all sorts of colours of the rainbows and every wall was a different colour and things like that. But if you just think about what kind of colours you might have at home, it's not often that you'd have a red wall and a yellow wall and a purple wall all in one room. So, you know, it's that kind of calming it down a little bit sometimes, isn't it? That really can help mental health as well. I was once asked to go into a setting where the children's behaviour was like they were literally climbing the walls. They were going loop-a-loo. They could see the children just buzzing around, but it was quite a small room and it was painted dark red. And if you think about the colour spectrum and what red is in terms of, if you think about the colour monster that we're doing with the children, it's angry colour is associated with red, isn't it? And some small wonder why some of these children were going crazy. So they adjusted that, and we thought about the environment a little bit more, and there was a massive just an impact straight away. You could just see it, the impact straight away was huge as well.
That's interesting, that. So and a lot of preschools are in church halls and things like that. So someone's just put down about a staff room when it's packed away in a village hall. You know, we've had the kitchen area sometimes free that you could go into. I've got another playgroup that I go into that they've got reduced rooms. So at some part of the day, they reduce the room down so that the staff have got another part of the room as well. So that, you know, they break the activities down and reduce where the children are, so the staff can have their lunch further down the hall rather than you know, and then having barriers up and things like that so that the children can't see them could be a thing. What do you think, Sue, for that?
Yeah, it's tricky, isn't it? It depends on the layout of the hall as well, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does.
The preschool that is local to us, it's actually upstairs, and they've taken over both sides. So they've got a messy area and a room that's not. So in terms of where their staff sit for breaks, I don't think that they do, actually. I think that they have the lunch club now between morning sessions and afternoon sessions, and maybe the staff sit with the children to eat their lunches if they're there for lunch club. So I suppose it's not just the area for the break, but it may be the area full stop. I mean, we do a lot for the children's wellbeing, and I think sometimes we can automatically incorporate the adults' wellbeing at the same time. People have mindfulness sessions now with the children, and maybe that mindfulness after lunch before they either go to sleep, or maybe the children go off and do something else depending on the ages. And there's a lot of things I think we can build into routines. Maybe there might be a bigger chair that the adults could sit on at lunchtime rather than perched on a little chair with the children eating lunch and things like that. If we think of some of the approaches like the Reggio approach, where and some of the Montessori approaches where they do sit down with children, and the lunchtime is a almost a mini family occasion as well. So maybe if we can't get the breakout room for members of staff, just thinking about the routines and how they support staff's wellbeing at the same time as children's maybe as well. Should run that in church halls, it really is.
Yeah.
Somebody's just saying that they've moved their staff area to behind the storage shelves as we're in a church room, and it's really made a huge difference. That's good as well. So that's similar to what Hazel was saying as well, isn't it, there as well?
Yeah. Yeah. So
thinking back also to some of the tricky things in terms of finance, I've seen a lot of people doing food banks now, either signposting to food banks or signing up with supermarkets. Supermarkets often have lots of things that are near they use by or set a shelf life, or best before, not used by, and the shelf life ends. And also sometimes if things come with damaged packaging, they don't put it out and things like that. So maybe that's another thing that you could perhaps look into is talking to your local supermarkets to see if there's anything like that you can offer, staff to take home, and also maybe pop it in reception so that parents, obviously our families might be struggling as well, and there's no stigma to it. We've got all these things that have been delivered, or we've just collected it all, take what you want, and so that can really help maybe the people who are finding the finances tricky as well.
Yeah, no, that's great. That's so yeah, we've put down about the sort of low well-being as well, haven't we? Someone put that down. So, you know, thinking about your, as I said before, thinking about your meetings that you're having with the staff and supporting the staff with their and sort of trying to action what you can to support people's well-being if it is low, because it is really hectic. And I've got quite a few nurseries that are saying that the low on staff, so other staff are having to work extra hours and things like that. So trying to support that in your policies and procedures, and making sure, are you having regular wellbeing meetings with your staff, is a question, and have you got wellbeing policies in place, you know, because it's really difficult, isn't it? Because we know that we've got you know, managers are not getting their holidays, and you know, they're having to work extra and things like that. So it can be really tricky for people. So it's trying to get that even balance that we're doing. Yes, I do have a wellbeing policy that you could look at. What I'll do, as Sue said, what I'll do, if you message Sue, I will send it out. We'll send it out actually with the certificate, if that's all right with Sue. Is that all right, Sue? Yeah, so we'll do that. So we'll send that out, and it's just a general one, so you can have a look at it and fit it around you. So you know, to support you. So right, so if you want to, we'll move on. So it's important, and about media with your team of staff and things like that, because media has a massive impact on people having positive and negative influences and things like that. And I think it's, in some ways it's really good, and it can be, you know, a really good tool, your Facebook and things like that. But I used to have staff that would come in and say, I was working with so-and-so all day yesterday, and when I got home I looked on Facebook and she's gone and put that she'd had a terrible day and this and this, and it's really has that knock-on effect to how that team work together, how they gel together when people are putting that up. And I think it's important as a team that you talk about how people feel and things like that, and what kind of things that they are putting on Facebook, so that they're not influencing or not spoiling the team harmony and things like that. And I don't think they actually know the power of social media. So it's important that we sort of look at the research and we sort of support our team to understand about Facebook and, you know, Twitter and what impact it has on the team. So, you know, because we don't want to, and if you've got a member of staff that's saying about the self-worth and the self-esteem, you don't want it knocking down, if you know, and dragging down. So it could be that you say to them, just take a bit of a time off social media and just give yourself a bit of a chill out, so not to go on there, because it has that negative effect on people, you know. And it might be that you might have you know, children of seeing social media as well, and you know, so it is important that you're sort of thinking about how media has a knock-on effect to individuals, and how it can influence people. We do also need to be, yes, you're quite right, need to be informed about the online safety and the guidelines and everything like that. And, you know, that's on your local safeguarding board. And also it's also on your local offer as well, thinking about how we can support media in the local offer as well. Right, Sue, thank you. So we're going to start and think about how you can support yourself and support others, and how you can start and care for yourself. So, you know, you're starting to look at self-care. And I thought it was really funny. On Tuesday, I got a calendar little sheet, and I rip them off all the time. And I look at the little quotes and everything like that. And this calendar sheet said, when I've dropped it on the floor, it said, take care of your body. It's the only place that you have to live. And I thought that was really, really poignant about what me and Sue were going to do this evening. And I thought it really is important that you do take care of your body, because, you know, we've only got one body. So you've got to think about how you can care for yourself, how you can support yourself, and think about all the different opportunities that you've got to be able to do that. You know, going for a walk, taking the exercise, eating correctly, and supporting. You know, we're really good at supporting our children to eat correctly, to go out to play and things like that. But you need to sort of reflect, keeping a little diary of things that you're doing, and, you know, and think about how you can support yourself. Your treatment opportunities, thinking about how different treatments can help and support individuals, and thinking about how you can sort of look at recovery. So if you've not been well, if you've got a member of staff that's coming back, it might be that you do a phased return for that member of staff, so that they can put themselves in correctly, that you're regularly reviewing the member of staff or yourself, and looking at the, you know, how they're feeling, how they're being supported. And it could be that you have a buddy system in the room. So there might be another person that's in the room if someone's not being very well, if they've had time off work, and, you know, you're concerned about them, that they can go and speak to and support them, or observe them to see if they're changing, or things, you know, behaviours changing or anything like that. So it's really important that you think about how you can help yourself and help others with this this area, because it, you know, and your policies are good, and your wellbeing meetings and everything like that, because we're thinking about all the stress. And yes, you know, we've got all the different things that we can buy, support people, you know, with the fruit baskets and the chocolate and the biscuits and all that. You know, so you've got those kind of things that you can do, but there's also, you know, your healthy snacks and things like that. But it's really important that you think about, I would always say thank you to a member of staff as they were walking out of the door every single day. I would make sure I said, thank you for working today. Thank you for your support. And I would always, if I've been in the office as we were going out at night, I'd always say thank you, because I think it's most important, you know, and recognizing things that they do is really important. Even though they said, as you know, as soon as you walk in, Hazel, everything seems to go wrong. And I'd say, well, it's not my, you know, I didn't just walk in and things go wrong. It's just one of those things, you know, but you've got to have your eyes and arms all over, and you're supporting your staff, you know. But if you've got staff members that are really good at something, and you know, give them the opportunity to do that, because that'll build up their self-belief and their confidence. You know, many a time they'd walk in the nursery and say, can you tell me where the owner is? And they'd say, oh, she's in toilets cleaning up, she's changing nappies, she's doing whatever. Because I had a member of staff that could type faster than I could ever type. So I'd give her a job to type while I got do something else. So making sure that you're working with your staff and giving their best parts, bits that they can do. I've never been a kind of person that sort of says, oh, well, you can't do that because I'm the manager, I'm the owner, and that's my job. I'd always want all my staff to know exactly what was going on, and all have that same confidence what was going on, because I thought it was very important that staff did know different jobs, because if they were off sick or something happened, everybody knew what was going on, and you'd find out who was shining in certain areas, and then they'd be more confident. And I think it's really important when we think about the key workers and we think about the Senkos, I would always, for all key workers, I would always be giving them the role of identifying where the child's at and how the child's at, because then with the Senko, they haven't got as much work to do. They've got that confidence. And with one of the level 3 Senko course that we do, I always ask people to include in their induction pack the role of the Senko and how important it is, because I think it is really important to include that in your staff induction, so that staff are getting more confidence in establishing where this child is and everything like that. Sorry, so I've gone off a little bit. Could you turn over, please? Thank you. So trying to manage that conversation is really important, so when you're having those wellbeing meetings, Carl Rogers was so right in what he was saying about, making sure that you've got those, you're actively listening to that person, you're showing them that you're actively listening, and you're actioning everything that they're wanting you to do. So you're making sure that you're listening to them and being kind and things like that, but making sure that you understand them and that they understand you, because they've got their agenda and you've got yours, and it's really important that you find out what they're listening, because staff members can really give you good ideas of what could be changed, how they can support them. But having that conversation with somebody about how they're feeling and being truly empathetic with them, it's really important, because that makes that person feel valued and supported, and things like that, as well as it does for you. Asking your member of staff, how am I doing as a manager, as a leader? Is there anything I can do differently? How, so asking them to go back is really important. Thank you, Sue. Because we need to be able to show that we're supporting. We need to be able to show how they can help us, and we need to be open-minded, because sometimes we're not open-minded. Sometimes we get into that routine, we think this is how it needs to be, and we need to be open-minded about it. So, making sure that you've got your supervisions in place, you've got your appraisals, making sure that you've got that support there. You could even have people to, you could have a wellbeing leader within your nursery, so that person could actually be responsible for making sure that they're talking to everybody, they're thinking about how they can support and things like that. So you've got a champion that is, your well-being person in your setting would be absolutely fantastic, because this is the kind of person that they can trust and they can respect. That's not going to go and talk around all the nursery about this person's got this problem, that you're respecting everybody, and making sure that you're being patient, because it might take a little bit of time to support that person and get that conversation going. Just a little bit of a chip, talking about how they're feeling, how things are going on at home, how things are going on with the team, and is there any changes I could make. So that might start your conversation going, but you could have a bit of a quiz. You could have a bit of a quiz. We have an individual that said that they've got a wellbeing champion, and they find it extremely beneficial, which is really good. And they take time with individual members for a chat and go through things, which I think is fantastic. Yeah, so thank you for that, really appreciate that. I'm glad to see it's working. If you put that person in place, as important as your safeguarding officer, as your Senko, you've got that person in place. It's really, really important, because we're trying to support that person well-being and everything. Thank you, Sue. So, you know, supporting your staff and your well-being and everything like that. So we're sort of looking at the basic needs, making sure, like Sue was saying about the food bank, I thought that was absolutely fantastic, but making sure that their home and everything is correct, that they've got a healthy diet, they're not rushing, trying to just grab something to eat, you know, that's not helping them, chocolate and things like that, you know, talking to them about their exercises and supporting that, making them feel as though the safe and safe in the environment and the fully respected is really important, and giving them plenty of opportunities to pick, you know. So, and I think Maslow is really important, and I think Maslow is an absolute fantastic theorist about making sure that the hierarchy is set there. Never mind about, you know, your love and all that kind of stuff first. The basic thing is your food, your rest and your water. That's what's going to have that beginning for that individual. Once you start to get that in place and they're getting plenty of that, you know, then they're going to start to feel as though they're at home and they're feeling safe, and then feeling belonging and, you know, self-esteem and things like that, which is what everyone deserves in where they are. So it's really important that, you know, we get that into place and support them. Dr. Levers is also, you know, well-being and sort of thinks about how, you know, it's a great stage of well-being. So it's important that we get children to also, you know, make sure that they are feeling okay about themselves, you know, and being open and honest. So trying to support individuals is really important. Has anybody got any points that they want to discuss there, or anything that they've done within the setting or anything? If you want to put that in the chat, you can do.
I think I included this, the Leuven scales, in terms of, obviously sometimes we use them in terms of thinking about the children's levels of wellbeing and involvement, but there's no reason why we can't do these levels of involvement on staff as well. And I think sometimes, personally speaking, supervisions can be something that's like it's penciled in for every term or 3 times, 4 times a year or whatever it is, and they can be, oh crikey, it's my supervision again. And sometimes it can be like a mechanical thing, can't it? Yes, I'm fine, yes, my children are fat, yeah. And you're going through those things, and sometimes it's not useful, it's more kind of a thing we've got to get through. And I think sometimes if we have a focus on the supervisions, but just before you give them maybe the Leuven scales to consider, maybe you give them the wellbeing questionnaire or what have you to consider, and then you've got something so that staff know, because some staff would feel stressed that they're having a supervision and they don't know what to talk about and how to open those things. But if they've got that like agenda to begin with, or maybe in a staff meeting, if you're talking about wellness and wellbeing, maybe those kind of conversation starters, because sometimes that conversation of we'll talk about it later, I've got something really important to tell you in the staff meeting, sometimes is the crunch point of starting to worry and being anxious about, oh, what's she going to say to me then, what's going on there as well.
Yeah, no, it is. And I think the well-being questionnaire is really important as well. And I have got an example of a well-being questionnaire which we can send out as well, which is very nice to sort of change practice and make sure everybody's feeling safe and confident in the environment. Thank you, Sue.
So
yeah,
it's just saying,
I've just seen that, yeah.
Hazel, the first question in supervisions are, how are you? And I think that's really good if you think that staff are going to answer nicely. Lots of people sometimes go, I hope you're well, and I go, yeah, I'm well, but actually I'm thinking, oh crikey, I'm running around like a headless chicken today, and I'm running around. But I don't say that, I just go, oh yeah, everything's fine, thanks, I hope you're well too. But it's about that real conversation. It's not the lip service stuff, is it? It's that staff can say, actually, I'm really struggling at the moment. And would they say that? Would they be confident in being able to do that? Or would they try and hide it, maybe thinking it's some kind of weakness almost, maybe?
Because I mean, in some cultures, so it does look as though it's some kind of weakness, you know, stiff upper lip, crack on, let's get on with it, and everything like that. But we need to sort of step back and think it's not all about that, you know. And as a manager, I know in your head you're going to be thinking me staff ratio, this, that, and everything else. And if this staff member doesn't work, and it's all that kind of pressure that's on yourself, isn't it? About trying to get, and you know, trying to support each other and things like that. A weekly offload, that's really interesting. I like that. So yeah, that's really interesting. To sort of, would that be in a staff meeting or things like that? I probably think it would be, or a wellbeing meeting. So yeah, that'd be really good. So we're thinking about the recovery model and thinking about, you know, those positive relationships. And I think when you're having that supervision, when you're having the wellbeing meetings, that positive relationship will develop, and will be able to, you know, so that person is starting to feel safe and secure. They are starting to think about how they're looking for the future, and growing and achieving. You know, so it's really important that you've got the right kind of environment, so nice and quiet area, supporting the person, phones off and all that kind of stuff, so you are actively listening. You know, you haven't got a time scale on how long they're going to be, a quick 5 minutes in the office or things like that. Making sure that you are understanding and listening to that person, and supporting them, and then, you know, thinking about what their problems are and trying to come up with something that would be beneficial to that person, because not everyone is going to fit every single person. It would be that you need to look at, you know, how they would feel. And that's why with one of my members of staff, she went out for lunch just so she would be making feel better, you know. But we're trying to get that person supported, you know, so that they're included in everything, and so that they're feeling good about themselves. So think about, ask them what they like, what they don't like, and think about things that they can do that they really do like to build up that resilience, and support that resilience. Because as you were saying before, you know, some people are nervous about when Ofsted are coming out, they're not confident, but it's trying to get them to repeat things. And I think, you know, when we think about CBT therapy, we think about repeating. So if somebody's scared of saying goodbye, hello to parents and things like that, if they do it steadily with a peer, they're going to get more used to do it and regularly do it. And then you just, like we would any adult, we just drop off the peer from them, and they're confident in talking and things like that. So it's making sure that, as Sue said, you know, the theories can be linked to adults as well if they're unconfident. So if you've got someone shadowing or supporting, it can really help them to support that. I like what we've just been put in the box about at end of each day that the children are leaving. We discuss any issues and raise, you know, so I think that's really good, because you're discussing them straight away at the end of the day, and they're being addressed then, so that they are being supported. Right, so thank you. So there's lots of different things that we can support, you know, as you're saying about a welcome, as we're saying about having a well-being leader, champion within our setting. Think about what your policies are saying. Think about how you can, what these policies are, and things like that. You can also look at making yourself available, so that you've got a time, as you know, that people can open door policy to your staff, that they can just drop in and talk to you and support you. And showing, like I was saying before, showing your appreciation, because then they'll start and show their appreciation back to you. and support you with it. So it's really important that we sort of thinking about all that support and that training and everything. And sort of putting that in. Right, so if you can just move to the thing. These are all the different and signposting that you can do for your staff. You can look at the local mind is absolutely fantastic. They can support lots of people with mental health and things like that. You can start to look at, you know, any counselling or therapies in your local area, which is, the waiting list is just ridiculous, really. But Samaritans is always there if you need to signpost anybody to that, or the Mind website, lots of really good things. And of course, you've got your Rethink, you know, and these are things that can also help your children, teenagers, or anything like that, if you need to signpost anyone to any of these. And in the wellbeing policy and procedure that we used to have also we used to have these all at the back of the policy and procedure, so that people knew where to go and how to go and how to access it. I just had something pop in the box about stress and staff being off with stress, etc. Appropriate time off. Oh, they've got WhatsApp groups to get them to come back to work. Wellbeing apps, yes, it could be. Yeah, that'd be really good. Thinking about how we've got wellbeing apps for individuals. We've also, on the next slide, so if you can just move on to the next slide. NHS are absolutely brilliant about stress busters, and these are things that you could click onto, and these will give you guides so that staff can look at these guides and support themselves, self-help tools, and think about how they can sort of look at activities about stress. There's 10 stress busters there, so these are really good to have for you to be able to support staff or parents, or you know, or yourself, just to go through them and support them. So would you like to say anything on any of those parts?
No, I think I'm good with that. Thank you. Sorry, I've choked in quite a lot. I've been on your slides tonight. I'm just trying to think of the best practices bits that I see in the various Facebook groups, and obviously when I'm out in these nurseries doing the assessments, and there's some really lovely practice that goes on. And wondering that some of the questions maybe that an inspector might ask your staff is, how do you feel that your well-being is supported by management? And then they might come and ask you about how your well-being is maybe managed if you have an owner that's kind of sat above you. So they'll want, there's definitely a conversation to be had. And if you've got the agenda items and maybe any meetings, notes, minutes, even from different meetings where you've discussed well-being, if you've maybe written down some of the offloading that staff have done, if there's specific themes maybe and then think about what can we do to help. And sometimes asking staff, you know, I understand that's an issue, but you don't need, you as the leader don't have to have that one single answer. You can throw it out there. We're experiencing such and such. It seems that sounds, you know, this is a common issue. Has anybody got any ideas on what we can do to make this better? There's so much pressure on the earlier sector at the moment. It's trying to be kind to everybody, isn't it? It's one of those big things, isn't it? Be kind to yourself, to be kind to staff, try and get them and help them through. There's so much pressure at the moment, and obviously on incomes and workloads and everything else, isn't there? So
I think being kind to yourself is really important. I think, you know, when you're speaking to people, it's how you would speak, how you would want to be spoken to, I think is really important, you know, when you're speaking to people, because it can have a knock-on effect, you know, to how you speak to them, to how they speak back to you. So it's really important. But, you know, so yeah, so thank you very much for tonight. So Oh,
you.
there we go.
There we go, finished on time as well, I think.
Yeah.
Thank you, Hazel, for that. That's been really interesting.
Right, no problem.
Joining us. If you've got obviously any questions, you can address them to Hazel and I will stop the recording now, but just to say that we're trying to make this a monthly free webinar. And if you've got any questions or if you've got any suggestions of what content you might want to see for the future months, then please do let us know and we will do our best to sort that for you. I'm just going to stop this recording.